Tonight, we discuss Nigeria in international politics. For much of the past week, Nigeria has been in international news, from President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's attendance at the G20 summit in India to the resuming of relations between Nigeria and the United Arab Emirates, UAE. At the G20 summit, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu engaged with leaders on a global stage, including President of the United States, Joe Biden, the German Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, and the Indian Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, among several others. According to news reports, Nigeria is expecting investments of up to $14 billion from those engagements at the G20. At the same time, the United Arab Emirates, UAE, is expected to lift its months-long visa ban on Nigerians. Consequently, Etihad and Emirates Airlines will be resuming flight operations in Nigeria soon. The developments are said to issue from one-to-one agreement between President Tinubu and President of UAE, Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, in Abu Dhabi. So tonight on Sunday Politics, we review what these issues mean to you, the Nigerian citizen. How would lifting Dubai visa ban affect you, the ordinary Nigerian? What does $14 billion in investments mean to you? These are some of the questions we'll be looking at tonight with my guest. But before then, let us take a brief look at the issues.
And Bola Tinubu has expressed displeasure that the visa ban between United Arab Emirates and Nigeria is so disheartening. He stated this when he paid courtesy visit to the United Arab Emirates president to make the relationship between the country more cordial. A cross-section of people that spoke to Trust Television said the lift of the visa ban will go a long way to make both countries more cordial in terms of boosting their economy.
Yeah, because of even now, there is some of our students that they are studying in Dubai, but due to the visa ban, so no in, no out. That means that they have blocked everywhere. But now, and even our marketers, likewise, I have where I normally buy market in Barnet. So as you normally go to buy and buy things. So since when they block, so it stopped. But by now, I know that he will bring his market, and economically Nigeria will be improving. And even the income and our relationship. He done a good job, to be sincere. By himself, he did not even send representative. He go by himself, meet the king of the country and discuss and solve the issue. This is a good way. Any country that he have a listening ear, because if it's another president, he will not care. So, but due to the citizens are complaining, he listened to them, and he went by himself. He did not even send. So it's a good thing. Tinubu did the right thing, and he should keep doing so.
Well, I would like to believe that everything that happens both within and outside the country has an effect on the country, directly or indirectly. However, in this case, I won't be quick to say it is going to be positive or negative, even though a part of me feels like it's actually going to be positive. But then I won't be quick to jump into conclusions, seeing the happenings around in this country and around the world entirely. So basically, I'm going to speak my opinion as a person and in relation to the economy and what is happening at large. So first of all, I feel like the first question should be, do the students want to really come back? You know, I feel like that's going to be the first question. But since the ban has been lifted, in as much as some of them will want to come back, we still have some probably have other things they want to do or other courses they want to run and all of that. But then again, I also want to look at the fact that some of them wouldn't want to come back here, considering the academic atmosphere we have at the moment. They'll probably want to go elsewhere, you know, and then get if that is if they want to further, and those who want to return home. I mean, since the visa ban has been lifted, like, they can, you know, easily come home, and I mean, I feel like that's all I have to say.
Other resident who said the move by the president is actually an imperative one will go a long way also to boost the economic strength of both countries.
Yes, most definitely it's going to affect the country more definitely. And one of the things you should know is that the majority of the investors that we have in Nigeria come from this part of that country. And now when there is visa pandemic, they can come to the country, whereby Nigerians can also go to the country to seek for investors. And no matter how Nigeria is sustainable, we still need foreign investors so that we can grow. So I personally think that it's going to increase the growth of the economy, and majority of the time the investor from outside the country will come, and we as a Nigerian, we can go there to also seek for money to help with our economy. Now, number one stuff we should know is that it's so unfortunate to see that Nigeria educational system is very bad. Now, this will enable people to go outside there to seek for opportunity, most especially education, that will ensure that when they come back here, they will do something different. So people there will have the privilege to finish their schools, and Nigeria can also go there to see how things are being done so that we can come back here and change the scope of Nigeria as a country.
Nigerians have called on government to do more to enable the country move forward.
Welcome back. This is Sunday Politics, and with me is our good guest, Marlon Ilyas Ugadu, who is a veteran journalist, a diplomat, a politician, and a well-known public affairs analyst. He is a member of the editorial board of Daily Trust and also a columnist with the same newspaper. In the February 2023 elections, he contested for the position of Senate representing the Taraba South Senatorial District. You're much welcome, sir.
Good evening, viewers. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. So maybe we can just go straight into the issues. We see Nigerians giving their views about the visa, the lifting of ban on Nigerian visas, to Dubai. But before that, the first event in which the president attended was G20. There was a lot of talk about what that meant, and throughout last week, there were a lot of images and videos of the president with many world leaders at that event. What does it mean to the average Nigerian person? What does those visits mean for Nigeria?
Well, I think Tinubu's visit to the G20 summit was a welcome development for him and for Nigeria, because it's just come on. It's just been, it's been sworn in not more than 3 months ago. And he needs to connect with the world. He needs to be able to link up with the world so that it will be a sort of introduction to him and for him. And there can be no greater or better summit or better forum than the G20, which comprises leaders of developed countries and leaders of emerging countries like India, China, and all the rest. And it's also an opportunity for him to also meet some of the chief executives of global companies and some of the chief executives of bilateral agencies of the world, because it's not just a political summit, it's also an economic summit. So it's a very welcome development so that he can connect with those leaders and be able to talk on the sidelines of the summit. And of course, we should take pride in the fact that our president was specifically invited by the host of the summit, the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi.
Yes.
So it's a development that we should take pride in, because even though we're not members of the G20, but we were invited to come. And I think the reason behind it is to be able to know who is the new leader of Nigeria, and to be able to sit down and talk about bilateral issues. And during the summit, he was able to hit several birds with one stone. He was able to meet with President Joe Biden.
Yes.
He was also able to meet with Bundeskanzler Olaf Scholz.
Yes.
And some leading, investors, like during the time he was able to meet with several, several industrialists in India. Who have pledged to come to invest in Nigeria. So I think it's a welcome development, and we should encourage some of these visits, because then the world will get to know who the new leader at the helm of Nigeria is and how to engage with him. Interesting.
It happens that at the time that he was going to India, it coincided with the time that the tribunal was also approving or at least affirming his election, which had been challenged by the candidate of the PDP and that of the Labour Party. Does that have any significance, the fact that he was going out to meet with the other world leaders at a time in which the legitimacy of his election was being reaffirmed? Does that have any impact on him as president of Nigeria or not?
I think there's a fundamental difference between policy and politics. What was happening in Nigeria while he was away or while he was going to India was politics.
Yes.
And what was going to happen in the summit in India was policy.
Interesting.
Because whatever had happened, whatever would have happened, if he were perchance, if the court had declared the election null and void, and a rerun was needed, Nigeria has to go on.
Yes.
So if that happened, perhaps maybe the highest ranking person on the delegation would take over, because then the issue of his legitimacy has been called to question. So for that reason, the government is a continuum, and it didn't matter whether he was going to whether the tribunal was going to strike out or whether it was going to uphold the requests of the petitioners. But this was something that had to be done, and it's a bilateral issue involving Nigeria and other countries. This was an opportunity he couldn't miss because of what was going to happen. So I think it wasn't something that could disturb the flow of policy, the flow of government, and the flow of bilateral relations between us and other countries, especially given the fact that this is an opportunity to meet world leaders for the first time since he became the president. So it was Nigeria there, not necessarily President Tinubu. So whatever, regardless of whatever happened to him, we need to be there so as to be able to get the benefits of that summit. And of course, as it turned out, he was, his election was upheld, and of course, government has to continue.
Thank you. But there are those who have shared this school of thought that when it comes to going, visiting foreign leaders or attending foreign summits, Nigerian leaders tend to be very good at this. But when it comes to Nigerians, seeing the benefits of those visits and those conferences and those summits, on the ground, the people tend not to see some of these things. How do you think that this being the president's first major outing on the world stage and the reported benefits that is there a change, or does it mean that it's going to be a change, or are we just being given more of the same like before?
Well, your guess is as good as mine, but we all know the devil is in the details. We've had some of these bilateral agreements. Okay. They're there, gathering dust at the Federal Ministry of External Affairs. And what it needs to is the follow-up. I mean, when the President Buhari came to power, I remember in the first few months of his coming to power, he went around the world, visiting almost on a weekly basis, traveling around the world, trying to, trying to meet world leaders. He was at the G Summit in Germany. He was in a number of, he traveled around a lot to the world, to world summits like this. And a lot of, agreements, tentative agreement, pledges came from this. Eventually, we, as you rightly observed, didn't tend to see the results of this. And as I said, the devil is in the details. You could have some of these agreements written on paper or written on pencil, as it were, but at the same time, it's a matter of the follow-up. Because, while these are pledges, you need to, follow up. We need to have, a committee or a kind of, follow-up process where some of these arrangements or some of these issues will be followed up very, very concretely and in detail. Now, well, Tinubu has done it. He had pledged, he's an investment minded kind of man, because a private businessman as well as being a politician. But at the same time, he had pledged that he was going to attract foreign investors. Now, that's a good pledge. That's a good vibe. But at the same time, as we said, it's left for him to drive the civil servants, the bureaucrats that would now follow up. And don't forget, this pledges of around $14 billion by the Indian industrialists and businessmen.
Yes.
It's just a pledge. It's not necessarily, a concrete thing. We have to follow it up. And let's not forget, too, that Nigeria also being a top investment destination does not necessarily, must necessarily put the issues on ground to be able to attract these investors, because there are so many investment destinations, and if you do not guarantee a lot of things for them, despite all the pledges, they may not want to come around here. We need to get our security right. We need to get our investment portfolios right. We need to get return on investments. We need to get protect the environment for the investors to thrive. And even if they give you a pledge, if some of these things are not put on pen to paper, are not concretized, you will not get, because they are putting their money here, and there are so many other destinations that are attracted, that want their attention. And if you don't follow up, they see that you don't have guarantees that will make their investment safe, that will make their people safe, and that will make the repatriation of capital or profit safe, then they think twice about coming. And that is why it needs a lot of follow-up on the part of our bureaucrats who will now do the necessary details, and on the part of even the government itself. Tinubu has gone to do what he's supposed to do, which is to at least sit down with them, and they've agreed to, or tentatively, to come over to Nigeria, which is a good sign. But we've been there before. What we need to do now is to concretize, especially at this period of our economic life. We need to be able to attract these investors, and we need to do all the necessary things to.
Interestingly, one of the areas in which these investors want to come and invest in Nigeria is steel development. They want to invest in agriculture, in technology, but also in steel particularly. So Nigeria has had experience with Indian, the Vaswami brothers, with Indian investors in the area of steel and steel development before. Do you think that this is going to be different from what used to be the case? Again,
I say the devil's in the details. It's wanting to sit down with investors and one another to get your acts right.
Yeah.
Because investors they are investors. They're looking for the profit. And it depends, and you who is attracting the investors has to, look at how to get the best out of the investors as well as retain them. Now, if you don't get your acts together, they'll find a way out of reneging on what you have sat down with them. It's the reality of the world. We've sat down with investors around the world to do that, such deals, and at the end of the day, because we do not follow up and we do not get our acts together, it went apart. So for this one, I know, for instance, Ajaokuta Steel, project.
Yes.
There has been quite a lot of, a lot of toing and froing. At one time, it was the Vaswami brothers. At one time, it was the Mittal group of India. And India, it's actually one of the biggest steel producers. You have the Tata Steel, and they are among the best, the top 3 steel producers in the world. They have an expertise in steel production, steel processes, and all that. And we can stand to gain from them. But at the same time, we need to get our acts together. If you do not know how to get your acts together, investors will fleece you, and that's the reality of the world. And that's what happened in the past. There was a lot of contradictions within the Nigerian system, and this guy said, okay, well, these guys have not gotten their acts together. Let's get on and do what we feel we can. And that's why at the end of the day, we didn't get the benefit. And still, let's not forget one thing. You cannot have an industrial economy if you do not have steel.
Yes.
Steel is at the center of an industrial economy. Steel produces industrial goods, industrial machines that also give birth to other industries. So the foundation of every country, the progress of India, for instance, now is based on its steel production. That is why it is able to, manufacture trucks, manufacture, cars, and then meet its steel needs for its industries.
So the average Nigerian citizen sitting and watching this program in Yenagua, for example, or in Jalingo, the home front, Taraba, for example, or in Katsina, or in Ado-Ekiti in Ekiti State, or in Enugu in the southeast. What will this issue of steel development mean to them? this idea that Indians are coming to invest in Nigerian steel, what kinds of development would that mean? How can they envisage it? How can they see what would it mean to them? In terms of concrete day-to-day progress.
Well, what I can say is that steel and its variants, because you not just have steel, you have iron and steel, you have alloys, all kinds of things, is virtually the foundation of industrial economies, as I said. Because almost all what we have today has to do with steel. And steel provides the technology, take-off technology for industries. So steel, for every country, for instance, America couldn't have been where it is today if it didn't have steel. Pittsburgh, the city of Pittsburgh used to be known as the city of steel. The whole area around Pennsylvania, Ohio, the rest of them, the rest of those states were steel producing areas, and they produce quite a lot of steel for the railways in America. The same thing with Britain. The foundation of British Industrial Revolution was in steel. Cities like Sheffield, cities like, what do you call them? Say Sheffield, Birmingham, these are steel, producing areas. The same thing with Germany. The raw industrial areas, for instance, where, the hub of the steel production, you have coking coal, all kinds of, steel, alloys and steel attachments. So you need the steel industry to do that. And we want to produce cars, for instance. You need components of steel. We want to produce, railway tracks and railway, railway locomotives. We need steel. You need to produce buildings, for instance, the pillars for buildings. Steel is what it is. And if you do not get your steel together, if you do not get your steel production domestically, because steel itself produces the technology that you could, that dovetails into other industries. Because from there you have steel industries would provide for steel, for produce factories that use steel a lot. So once you have that, you are able to now, lay the foundation for further industrial takeoff of your country. That's why India today is one of the, largest industrial economies, because of its strong foundation in steel. In fact, India is even bigger than its former colonial master, Britain overtook it very recently because of its wide production of steel. And that is why they were able to even take over Leyland, British Leyland.
Yes, by the Tata brothers. So this is quite interesting. So for many Nigerians, maybe if there is follow-up, like you said, it could mean maybe more jobs, more opportunities for jobs, more opportunities for cheaper things that are made from steel, and so on. But beyond that, after all of the G20 summit, the president also went to the UAE and had a sit down with the president of that country, United Arab Emirates, and Nahyan, about the situation Nigeria finds itself with Dubai. It's quite interesting how many Nigerians feel like they have a cultural connection between Nigeria and the United Arab Emirates. And then we find ourselves on different parts, to the extent that there's been a ban on Nigerians traveling to Dubai. What does that mean for Nigeria, and especially the ordinary Nigerian person?
Well, before the ban, Dubai was one of the most attractive tourist, not just destinations, by Nigerians. And I know for sure that there are the Emirates Airlines, which is the flag Emirates airline, flag airline for Dubai itself. Let me just give you a background. Dubai is actually composed of 6 Emirates.
Yes.
The United Arab Emirates, and Dubai happens to be the most popular of the 6 Emirates. And the reason being that it's an open economy for tourism, for business. So a lot of Nigerians found it very convenient. And the visa process was easy to get, and it made it easier for Nigerians to collect the visas, to get the visas to Dubai, travel to Dubai, transact their business, and do some tourism. So business and pleasure. And along the line, it also, the Dubai authorities, in trying to attract people from all over the world, also put in things like real estate, which attracted a number of Nigerians who, found it very convenient place to go to transact businesses and also to, do some tourism, which is quite, a good thing. But again, and we're not the only country that actually benefits from this. There are so many countries around the world, Russians, South Africans, even British.
It's a hub. Free trade zone.
It's a hub. So it's a hub for business, for pleasure, for tourism and all kinds of things. And Dubai has really, really grown exponentially as a result of that. But again, they also have strict rules which they administer so as to keep the place safe, clean, and secure for everybody that wants to come to that. But again, as with Nigerians, a lot of people, Nigerians, have gone there to abuse those rules.
But one of the issues that came out last week was that the presidency reported that the ban has been lifted. That Nigerians can travel, and the Emirates, the ban on visa has been lifted. In addition to the airlines from Dubai, the Emirates and the Etihad coming to Nigeria, and maybe Nigerian airlines also going there. But later on, an official of the UAE here in Nigeria said that no such thing has happened, and that's not to be expected in the immediate future. So what happened there? What's really the situation on ground for the...
Well, I think it's an observation which can be borne out by facts, which is to say that,
Maybe before we've just been asked to go on a short break. When we return, you will have an opportunity to answer that question. And you too, the Nigerian citizen viewing at home and in your offices or wherever you may be this evening, you also have an opportunity to contribute to this program by speaking to us via our phone lines, which will be displayed on the screen just when we return shortly. Stay with us. Welcome back. We are discussing Nigeria and the world, and especially the travels of President Tinubu in the last week. What do those travels mean to you, the Nigerian citizen, and especially the ordinary Nigerian citizen? With me is Malam Ilyas Ugadu, a former candidate for senator in Taraba State, but also a public affairs analyst and a one-time diplomat. Just before we went, you were trying to explain what really happened. Is there a miscommunication between what the presidency reported and what newspapers later reported that the UAE envoy in Nigeria said? What's going on?
I think, well, let me just say, before I answer that question, let me just say, I mean, the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu needs to be commended for taking this step to ensure that, the visa ban on Nigeria by UAE is lifted. And of course, by going there himself, he gave weight to the issue, and which of course necessitated the authorities of Dubai and UAE to grant that. But then, such issues, I think, the handling of the communication, especially from the Nigerian end, leaves much to be desired. Because for a landmark development of this nature, there should have been joint press conference in Dubai between the Nigerian side and since it's a bilateral issue, because two presidents were involved, or two leaders were involved, should have been a joint press conference to announce to the world that, okay, our president and your president has come, we've had discussions on bilateral issues, including ban on visa, and don't forget, we also have outstanding issues on the airlines. The stoppage of air flights to Nigeria by the two airlines from that area, which is Etihad and Emirates. So these are issues that should have been handled together, and then questions tabled and answered for clarity. It's not for one country to go out and say this, especially since all the ink on the
had not even dried. Agreement.
So I think there should have been a better way of handling that, so as not to create some embarrassment, so to speak, on the part of the person who was dishing out the information, because he needed to cross-check. That should have been the procedure where two leaders meet and discuss and possibly agree on issues, to have said, okay, we are going to sit down and then address the press on this and these issues. And by the way, when they sat down, they would not have just talked about visa ban, they would have talked about economic issues as well. Maybe investment, just as a follow-up to what happened in India. They would have talked about investment issues, access issues and things like that, and the procedure for lifting the ban. So there will be a lot of clarity. But then I think it's a lesson to be learned, especially on the part of our presidency, so that these issues would not, crop up again.
But the viewer at home is asking the question, is there a lift on the ban on Nigerian visa to Dubai or not? Well, because you now have two statements from two different.
The simple answer is to say that, as I said earlier, the ink has not dried on the agreement, because it's one thing to say yes, we've agreed. It's quite another to follow up, because there are a lot of outstanding issues that involve that necessitated the visa ban. Issues of misbehavior of Nigerians, issues of conduct and etiquette of Nigerians, issues of visa abuse, issues of, don't forget, what really happened, what really necessitated the visa ban was allegedly two cult groups from Nigeria went over to Dubai and engaged in acts incompatible with the visa regime there. And of course, the Dubai authorities, in order to protect the city, which is a hub of business for everybody, they needed to make sure that, repeated acts of abuse of the process by Nigerians, especially Nigerians, needed to be curbed. And of course, that is what happened. And again, we also have the issue of repatriation of monies owed
in dollars,
owed Emirates. If you remember, Emirates operates about 4 or 5, 6 flights out of Nigeria, 2 out of Lagos daily, 1 out of Abuja, and I think another one in Lagos, in Kano. So that represents quite a huge air traffic between Nigeria and Emirates, and between Nigeria and Dubai. And of course, that is actually a helper to Nigerians.
That was part of the outstanding issues, actually.
Yes.
Because on the Nigerian side, there are those who maintain that the Emirates is benefiting more than Nigerians, because it had airlines, Etihad and Emirates, that were coming into Nigeria. But at the same time, Nigerian airlines going to Dubai did not enjoy the same or even near equal privileges in terms of landing rights. So Air Peace or any other Nigerian airline was finding it difficult to go. But just before you answer, we have our first caller for today. Yes, go ahead. Tell us your name and where you're calling from, and then go ahead with whatever question or contribution you have.
Okay. So my name is Abdullah. I'm calling from Gombe.
Go ahead, Abdullah. Yes.
My name is Abdullah Ali, calling from Gombe.
Oh, Abdullah, go ahead. We can hear you.
I want to have a clarification on these two issues. Is the visa ban now over or still on? That's what I didn't get up to the time we are now communicating. Thank you.
Thank you. So, the same question.
What I'm saying was that, like I said earlier on, the devil is in the details. When you have a visa ban that has lasted this long, you need to flesh out the details because there was something that necessitated the visa ban in the first place. So you go back, look at it, and then establish protocols on how this could be restored. And that would, of course, take time. You don't just, in the bilateral relations, you don't just go ahead and issue out.
Okay, we have another caller. Yes.
I'm at those states.
Okay, very good. Give us your name and where you're calling from, and then go ahead and ask a question. Okay.
I'm Shaka Aliu from Jetu. So, what I want to ask is that now, is it the ban is really lifted or not? This is my question.
So this is where this is the issue most people are saying, that the government came out. It's a serious issue because it's first matter of integrity and trust between the citizen and their government. The government came out to say that, okay, this is what our president had done. We all saw the videos and the images. Even now, we have seen the president actually in one-on-one discussion with the UAE president as well. And then our government came out to say that this is what they had achieved from that discussion, that there will be a lift, a lift on the ban that had been placed on Nigerian visas heading towards Dubai. And then 2 days later, or just less than that, newspapers went to find out from the other side of the argument, from Dubai authorities who are represented here in Nigeria, that has there been such a thing as a lift on the ban, so that people who want to travel can begin to make arrangements, can begin to find information about whether or not this is true. And you can see we have had 2 or 3 callers. All of them are asking the same question.
What I would say about this is that, yes, in principle, between the leaders of Dubai and Nigeria, the issue of visa has been discussed exhaustively, I suppose, and they have agreed that, yes, we need to re-establish the visa regime between the two of us. But the detail again...
We have a caller again. Yes. Go ahead. When you... sorry, we lost you. When you call in, you tell us your name, where you're calling from, and then you make your contribution or you ask a question. Yes. Yes, go ahead. Sorry. We cannot hear you. Can you speak a bit louder?
Hello?
Hello, yes, go ahead.
I'm Ahmed Bima from Niger State.
Okay, Ahmed from Niger State. Go ahead.
So we can travel to Dubai without any issue now?
Okay, back to you.
You can travel to Dubai just immediately because the details have to be worked out. Because as I was saying before your call came through, there is a tentative agreement between the presidents, but the details, I could see that the Minister of Aviation, Festus Keyamo, was there.
Yes.
Some officials also of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, External Affairs were there. So I believe that having agreed in principle at the top, they will now sit down with the Dubai authorities. And usually when you have such agreements, it is left to the two to jointly issue a press conference and say, look, yes, we have agreed that this thing has to be, will be revisited, will be restored, and this is the procedure we have put in place to make sure that Nigerians visiting Dubai and Dubai nationals visiting Nigeria, you know, would proceed. So for now, yes.
We have another caller. Yes.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah. Good evening.
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Hello. Good evening.
Can you turn your TV down a little? We can hear you.
Okay, I will do that.
So go ahead. Your name, where you're calling from, and then your question.
Okay, I will do that. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So we lost.
The procedure usually is for the two countries, the ambassadors or foreign ministers, or the officials appointed,
or even the presidents,
or even the presidents themselves,
to have a joint
press conference, especially either in Dubai where
the actual meeting took place.
And then proclaim to the world that between us we have resolved issues, and from now on, very soon the visa, regime will be restored. But it has to be worked out, eventually. So it's not as soon as Mr. President met with the Dubai authorities.
You have been a diplomat.
Yes.
You're very familiar with these issues. So what could have been the reason why that joint conference did not happen? Because the point of that joint conference is to affirm whatever has been agreed in private between the two of them, between the two leaders, to tell the world that this is what we have agreed. If there is such a press conference now that between President Tinubu and his UAE counterpart, then even if people cannot travel immediately, there will be that understanding from all parties that this ban has been lifted. So what could have been the reason why that press conference did not hold, from your experience?
Well, I would not, since I'm not privy to what took place between them, the leaders, but I know that the procedure is either the two presidents will address a press conference and these issues will be tabled and it will be answered, or the respective ministries or ministers of foreign affairs of both parties would work out the details.
We have a caller? Yes.
Yes, good evening.
Yes, go ahead.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. Go ahead.
I'm calling from Rivers State.
Oh, Rivers State. Yes, go ahead. Tell us your name and then ask your question or make your contribution.
Yes, my name is Mr. Daniel.
Daniel. Thank you, Dan. Can you go ahead? Dan, are you there? Oh, we lost Dan again. Yes, please.
So the Nigerian authorities, if I would say, or the presidency, jumped the gun. Because I believe, as it is now, the Dubai authorities would be looking at the details of the discussions, and they will need to get instructions from their principals so on how to proceed with this process. And of course, to say, okay, this is what we've done, this is what we're trying to do, this is how I want to smoothen the process, these are the kind of strictures we're going to put to ensure that it doesn't happen.
We have another caller. We hope that this time around we get the caller. We've been losing so many calls. Yes, please. Network all over again. Yes, please.
So I think yes, the agreement there has been an agreement between the Nigerian president and his Dubai counterpart, but the details will have to follow in terms of looking at the processes, the protocols, and how this could be announced to the general public, and how a step-by-step procedure of restoring the visa to Nigerians, But I think what happened in this case, I'm just speculating.
Okay.
But what happened is somebody within the presidency was, within the presidency or Federal Minister of External Affairs, was trying to jump the gun. And don't forget that the Minister of Foreign Affairs is just new to the post.
Yes.
He may not have, been appraised of the details of this arrangement, or he was still working on it, and this issue come. But I believe that eventually the visa ban will be lifted, and Nigerians would have the opportunity to travel to Dubai again. And also, let's not forget, it's not just about the visa ban. You may have a visa ban lifted, but what about the airline?
The airlines.
So these things will have to go together. So it will take a few more weeks, for instance, before it's concretized, and Nigerians would now be able to fly to Dubai.
But so far, thank you with that explanation. But so far, you can see even from Nigerians who have called so far and those who are trying to call, you can see there is a lack of clarity about what the situation actually entails, whether or not there is a lift on the ban. Now that the president is back in the country, the Minister of Foreign Affairs is also back in the country, the Minister of Aviation also back in the country, and you have a presidential spokesperson who was not in Dubai, who had spoken earlier on these issues. What do you think that the government ought to do now in order to clear the air, in order to give Nigerians clarity about this situation? Because evidently, Dubai is one of the top destinations where Nigerians visit. So people are really keen to know whether they are able to visit again or not. What do you think the government ought to do or should do?
Well, first of all, I would like to say that the president is not in the country right now.
Oh, all right.
He's on his way to New York.
Okay.
As we speak.
Or to the UN General.
To the UN.
Yes, I forgot. Yes.
The Foreign Affairs Minister definitely will be with him.
Thank you.
And possibly the Minister of Aviation too, Festus Keyamo, Yusuf Tugar, and most likely the gentleman who issued the press conference will be with him. That's the Ajuri Ngelale.
Yes.
So we may not have clarity on that from the presidency and from the government until they return. Or maybe at some point, somebody will have to be asked to do that. But then I think this clarity should come from the Minister of Foreign Affairs to give it the weight that it deserves. Or rather, a very serious press conference by a very, very well-grounded official to be able to say, yes, this is what happened. It was just, to paper over the cracks, so to speak. And then say, okay, look, this is it. Yes, we had an agreement with the Dubai authorities. The ban will be lifted, but we're working on the details so that eventually there will be clarity. And then they will now give the procedures and also open up for the agencies to who usually provide the visas. Say, okay, because they will have to issue fresh instructions to the agencies that provide the visa. Don't forget that visas to Dubai are not approved here.
Yeah, they're approved.
They're approved there. So the whole details will be worked out there. It is Nigeria that actually asked for the visa ban to be lifted.
Interesting.
Not the Dubai authorities.
Thank you.
But then, having seen our president's, presence there and the discussions that took place between our president and the leader of Dubai, of course, they will, because of in the interest of bilateral relations between us and Dubai, and in the interest of the volume of trade between Nigeria and Dubai, definitely something has to be done. But then there will be safeguards to ensure that what happened that necessitated the ban on visa will not be repeated.
Interesting. Thank you very much, Marlon Ilyasu Gadu.
My
this
pleasure.
is where we come to the end of today's show. We've tried to look at the issues around how Nigeria relates to the rest of the world, particularly in terms of the recent travels of the president. The president has jetted out yet again to New York to attend the United Nations General Assembly there. When he returns, we'll probably be looking at what happened there as well. But for now, as our guest said, the devil is in the details. If you don't follow up on international affairs, you don't gain anything from it, no matter how many travels you make. For you, our viewer, thank you for staying with us, and we hope you join us next week again, this time, same day, on Sunday, when we'll bring you another edition of Sunday Politics. My name is Suleiman. Good night.